The glass shattered before anyone could breathe. Dante Kwon's hand hadn't moved. He hadn't raised his voice. He had simply set his teacup down on the edge of the meeting table with 2 fingers, and the pressure alone had cracked it clean through. Tea spread slowly across the white marble like something bleeding out. Nobody moved. 12 men sat around that table. 12 men who had done things most people couldn't survive hearing about. And not one of them could look Dante Kwon in the eye right now. "Say again," Dante said quietly. His head of operations, Min-jun, swallowed. The Busan shipment was intercepted. Jang's people. "I heard you the first time." Dante stood. He buttoned his jacket. He walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and looked out at Seoul, glittering, vast, indifferent. "I asked you to say it again because I want you to hear how it sounds when you fail me twice in one sentence." The room was a hell breath. "Fix it by morning," Dante said. "All of you. Out!" They left so fast the door barely had time to close. Min-jun was the last one out. He paused. "Boss!" "Out, Min-jun." The door clicked shut. Dante stood at the window alone. Below him, Seoul pulsed with life. Restaurants full, streets bright, people laughing on corners. He watched it the way a man watches a film in a language he used to speak. 3 years ago, he would have been down there. 3 years ago, his brother Jay would have dragged him out by the collar and made him eat street tteokbokki at midnight like they were still university students. 3 years ago, he turned away from the window. If you are new here, welcome. And if you have been here before, you already know we do not do anything small on this channel. Drop in the comments where you are watching from right now, whether it's Lagos, London, Seoul, Accra, Toronto, anywhere. And if you have not subscribed yet, do it now. This story is going to need you paying attention from the very beginning. Let's go. Gloria Mensah had worked in the Kwon estate for 15 years. She knew every corridor, every silence, every danger. She knew which floorboard creaked outside the boss's study. She knew which guards drank too much coffee and got jumpy after midnight. She knew that when Dante's jaw was set a certain way, you cleared the room, and thank God you were not the reason for it. What she did not know how to handle was the phone call she received at 7 in the morning telling her that her daughter was at the front gate. Zara. Gloria said her daughter's name the way people say the name of a storm they weren't prepared for. "Baby, you said next week." "Annie Abina put more food in the car than I could eat alone, Mama. I had to come early." "Zara, I'm already at the gate. The tall guard is staring at me. Should I wave?" "I'm going to wave." Gloria closed her eyes, said a short prayer in Chui, and went to get her daughter. Zara Mensah Kim stepped out of that cab like she had arrived at a family reunion, and not one of the most dangerous private estates in Seoul. She had her mother's cheekbones and her father's Korean eyes, and absolutely neither parent's sense of self-preservation. She was wearing a yellow dress, carrying a suitcase in one hand and a cooler bag in the other. AirPods and Afrobeats loud enough that the guards could faintly hear it. She saw her mother rushing across the courtyard, and her whole face broke open. "Mama!" Gloria grabbed her into a hug that lasted exactly 3 seconds before she pulled back and gripped Zara's arms. "Listen to me. Listen carefully. You're going to take those earphones out. You're going to bring your voice down 3 levels. You're not going to make any jokes. I haven't said anything yet. I know your face, Zara. Your face is already making jokes." Gloria looked at her with the particular exhaustion of a mother who loved her child completely and understood her completely and was therefore completely terrified. This is not a normal house. The man who lives here is not a normal man. You will be quiet. You will be respectful. You will not. "Mama." Zara held her mother's face in both hands, gently. Looked at her. "I am 24 years old. I survived 3 years of fashion school in Seoul with no money and no connections and 1 pair of good shoes. I think I can manage 1 house." Gloria looked at her for a long moment. "I don't trust that at all," she said. "I know." Zara kissed her cheek. "Where'd I put my things?" The estate was enormous and cold and beautiful in the way that very expensive, lonely things are beautiful. High ceilings, black marble, floor-to-ceiling glass looking out onto manicured grounds. Everything precise, everything controlled. The staff moved through it in near silence, communicating in small, efficient gestures that told you everything about what kind of atmosphere they had all adapted to survive. Zara had been given a small room near her mother's quarters at the back of the estate. She had unpacked her suitcase, put her Annie's Kanamayer stew in the staff kitchen fridge with her name on it in both Chui and Korean, and was now trying to find the linen closet that the head housekeeper, Ajuma Park, had described to her in rapid Korean that Zara had only partially caught. She turned left at the end of the east corridor. She should have turned right. The door she pushed open was heavy and dark, and opened into a room that was nothing like any linen closet she had ever seen. Black marble desk, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a single lamp, papers organized with precision that felt almost aggressive, and behind the desk, Dante Kwon, looking up from whatever he was reading with eyes so still they barely looked real. 2 guards moved immediately. Zara saw the hands go to jackets, and her body registered danger before her mind fully caught up with it. But she did not run. She did not shriek. She stood in the doorway, and her gaze moved slowly around the room, not out of arrogance, but because her mother's voice in her head said stay calm, and her own instincts said running would be the worst possible thing she could do. Her eyes landed back on Dante, and then, before she could stop herself, before the filter her mother had begged her to install could engage, she said it. "Why does this room look so sad?" She said it in Korean, quiet and genuine, not a joke, an honest observation delivered by a person who had not yet fully processed that she was standing in front of the most dangerous man in Seoul. 1 guard hand closed around his jacket. Dante raised 2 fingers. They stopped. He looked at her, not the way he looked at his men. Not the way he looked at rivals across a table. He looked at her the way someone looks at something they don't have a category for. Zara came back to herself. She felt the weight of the room. She straightened and she bowed, a genuine respectful bow, not an ironic one. And she said in careful Korean, "I apologize. I was looking for the linen closet. I'll find it." She walked out. She pulled the door closed behind her with both hands. Quietly, she stood in the corridor for exactly 4 seconds. Then she pressed her back against a wall and looked at the ceiling and mouthed the words, "Oh my God," to nobody in particular. Inside the study, Min Jun had appeared from the side entrance without being summoned. He was looking at the door Zara had just walked out of. "Should I?" "Who is she?" Dante said. "Gloria's daughter. She arrived this morning. I can have her. Find out about her." Dante looked back down at his papers. Quietly, Min Jun paused. In 15 years of working for Dante Kwon, he had never once been asked to find out about a staff member's relative. He filed that information carefully in the part of his brain reserved for things that mattered. "Of course," he said and left. Dante sat alone in his sad room. He looked at the door for a moment longer than he needed to. Then he went back to work. The dinner that evening was the kind of thing that required 3 days of preparation, and still managed to feel like it could fall apart at any moment. Victor Jang, representative of the Busan syndicate that had intercepted Dante's shipment, was coming to the table, not to apologize, to negotiate, which meant it was a war conducted with chopsticks and expensive silence. Gloria had the entire household staff in formation by 5 o'clock. She had given every person their role, their position, their exact movements. She had gone over it twice. She pulled Zara aside for the 3rd briefing. "You serve from the left. You pour from the right. You do not speak. You do not make eye contact with the guests. You do not react to anything. Yes, Mama, you said. I'm saying it again." Gloria looked at her daughter with everything she felt but never said out loud. The fear, the love, the 15 years of careful survival that had kept them both breathing. "Please, just tonight, just be invisible." Zara looked at her mother's face, really looked at it. "Okay," she said softly, "I'll be invisible." She meant it completely. She almost managed it. Coming, the laugh, the aftermath, and the moment everything begins to shift. Comment below where you're watching from. I will be appreciating everyone in the comments, and tell us, are you already rooting for Zara? Dante sat at the head of the long table, composed as stone. To his left, Min Jun. To his right, 2 senior members of his organization who had been chosen specifically for their ability to sit through anything without their faces moving. Across the table, Victor Jang, 50, silver-haired, the kind of man who smiled with his mouth only, and three of his own men, all of them eating with the careful deliberateness of people measuring every moment. Korean formal dining protocol was being observed with surgical precision. Nobody poured their own drink. Dishes were offered before taken. The silence between sentences was respected like punctuation. This was not a meal. It was a negotiation conducted through etiquette, and every movement at that table carried weight. Zara understood this. She moved through it perfectly for 40 minutes, serving from the left, pouring from the right, eyes down, presence minimal. She was doing it. She was actually doing it. She was invisible. And then she caught her reflection in the enormous floor-to-ceiling window to her left and saw it. A full piece of her Annie's Connemara stew, green, unmistakable, sitting on her left cheek. It had clearly been there since she'd tasted the food in the kitchen an hour ago. She had walked through the entire staff briefing with it on her face. She had bowed to Min Jun with it on her face. She had spent 40 minutes circling this table with it on her face. She went completely still. Every professional instinct, she had said, do not react. Her mother's voice said, do not react. Every single thing said, do not react. She reached up casually to brush her cheek. Her elbow caught the edge of her serving tray. The tray tilted. The two empty glasses on it slid. She watched it happening in particular slow motion that disasters always seem to arrive in, and she moved, both hands up, one catching the tray, one catching both glasses simultaneously, her body twisting into a shape that should not have worked, but somehow did. Everything stopped moving. She was standing at a slight angle, both glasses upright in one hand, tray flat in the other, completely still. Every single person at the table was looking at her. Victor Jang had his chopsticks frozen halfway to his mouth. Min Jun looked like he had briefly left his body. The silence stretched. Zara straightened slowly. She looked at the table. She looked at no one in particular, and in the quietest, most composed voice she could find, she said in Korean, "The food follows me everywhere." She didn't smile. She didn't perform it. She said it the way someone states a simple fact about their life. 1 beat, 2 beats. Dante Kwon laughed. It came out of him like something that had been locked in a room for too long and finally found an open door. Short and sharp and completely real, his hand coming up almost immediately to cover his mouth, as if he could put it back. But it had already happened. It was already in the room. It changed the air pressure of the entire dinner. The table did not know what to do. Min Jun's chopsticks were still in the air. Victor Jang's eyes had gone very careful and very still in the way dangerous men's eyes do when they had just seen something useful. The other men exchanged the fastest glance in history. Dante's hand came down. His face was composed again in seconds. The laugh was over, but his ears, just at the tips, were faintly red. Zara bowed. She walked out of the dining room at a perfectly measured pace, the tray in both hands, glasses upright, back straight. She made it through the door. She made it 3 steps into the corridor. Then she stopped walking and stood there and said nothing for a very long time. The kitchen reacted like she had walked in carrying news of something historic. Ajumma Park grabbed both her hands. 3 of the younger staff members were already whispering. One of the kitchen boys was looking at her like she had survived something that people didn't usually survive. Ajumma Park kept saying under her breath, "How did he laugh? How did he laugh?" Gloria appeared in the doorway. She looked at her daughter. Her face held a very specific expression, the expression of a woman who had asked for one thing and received the exact opposite. "Zara, Mama, it was an accident." He laughed. "I know." Dante Kwon laughed. Gloria said it quietly, like she was telling her about something that had happened in a dream. "That man has not laughed since his brother died. Jade died 3 years ago, and that man has not." She stopped. She pressed her hand flat against her chest. "What did you do?" "I caught a tray. Zara, and I may have had stew on my face for an hour. That part was not planned." Gloria sat down on the nearest stool. Ajumma Park brought her water automatically, which told Zara everything about how often her mother needed to sit down and collect herself in this house. "The Jang people saw it," Gloria said quietly. "They were watching. Victor Jang notices everything. Why does it matter what he saw? Gloria looked at her daughter. Because in this world, anything that moves Dante Kwon is information, and information is a weapon. She reached out and held Zara's hand. I need you to be careful. I need you to be more careful than you have ever been in your life. Zara looked at her mother's face, at 15 years written into the lines around her eyes, and she nodded. She meant it. Dante did not sleep well. He was in his office by 5 in the morning. He sat at his desk and opened his files and read the same paragraph 4 times. He got up and went to a window. He looked at Seoul in the dark. He thought about nothing. He thought about a tray. He thought about the particular way she had said it. Not performing, not try to be funny, just honest. And the laugh had come out of him before he had any say in the matter at all. It had felt like something tearing, but not painfully, like a window opening in a room that had been closed too long. He sat back down. Min-Jun arrived at 7 with the morning brief. He went through shipment updates, security reports, the Jang situation. Dante listened and responded precisely and gave instructions clearly. Everything normal. Then, as Min-Jun was closing his folder, Dante said, "The girl, Gloria's daughter. What did you find?" Min-Jun opened the folder again. Zara Mensa-Kim, 24, half Ghanaian, half Korean. Grew up between Accra and Seoul. Currently completing a fashion design degree. Top of her department. No criminal associations. No political affiliations. She's been in Seoul on her own for 3 years. No family support financially. She works part-time at a fabric market near Hongdae to pay her rent. Dante was quiet. She teaches herself Korean traditional textile patterns in her free time, Min-Jun added, and then stopped, like he wasn't sure why he'd included that detail. Dante said nothing. He tapped 2 fingers once on the desk. "Keep an eye on the Jang side," he said. "If they ask about her again, I want to know within the hour." Min-Jun looked at him for half a second longer than he usually would. "Of course." He left. Dante looked at the door. Zara spent the morning helping Ajumma Park with a household inventory, a task that involved a lot of walking, a lot of Korean numbers that she had to occasionally count on her fingers, and enough comfortable silence that she almost forgot where she was. She was in the east corridor sorting through table linens when she heard footsteps that made the other staff around her subtly straighten their posture without turning around. She had already learned what that meant. She looked up. Dante was walking through with Min-Jun mid-conversation, not heading toward her specifically. He would have passed by without anything happening. He almost did, but he slowed. He looked at her, just for a moment, the way you look at a word you recognize, but can't immediately place. Zara looked back at him. She didn't look down. She wasn't rude about it. She wasn't challenging him. She just met his gaze the natural way that people do when they are not afraid. He kept walking. But 3 steps past her, he said, without stopping, without turning around in Korean. "You should eat lunch, not just your auntie's food. Real food." He was gone before she could respond. Ajumma Park was staring at the space he had just occupied with the expression of a woman witnessing a second miracle in 12 hours. Zara looked down at the table linens in her hands. She was smiling before she even knew it. By afternoon, the feeling in the estate had shifted. Not dramatically. Not in any way someone on the outside would have noticed. But 15 years of reading the household had given Gloria immense the ability to feel its temperature. And today it was different. The staff moved a little less carefully. Ajumma Park hummed while she worked, which she never did. Even the guards at the interior post seemed less like statues. And Dante, who had passed through 4 different rooms of the estate that afternoon for no clear operational reason, was not fooling anyone. Gloria sat in the small staff sitting room that evening and said nothing to anyone. She was afraid. Not of Dante, not of Jang, not of any of the obvious things. She was afraid of hope. She had lived in this house long enough to know that hope was the most dangerous thing any of them could afford. The next morning, Min-Jun found Dante standing at the window of the east corridor, just standing there, looking at the courtyard below where Zara was sitting on a stone bench in the early light, video calling someone in Accra, laughing at something her cousin was saying, gesture with her whole body the way she did when she was fully herself and not managing anyone's comfort. Min-Jun stood beside his boss. He looked at Zara. He looked at Dante. he said very carefully. Boss, the Jang side has made inquiries about the girl. 3 separate inquiries through different channels, all in the last 18 hours. Dante did not look at him. About her specifically? Yes. The courtyard light caught Zara's face as she threw her head back laughing at something her cousin said. Dante's expression did not change, but his stillness became a different kind of stillness. Next is where everything breaks open. The confrontation, the rooftop, the Chui note, and the ending that will have you in your feelings. Subscribe now so you don't miss what's coming. And drop a like if Dante just earned one from you. Dante summoned her formally. One of the interior guards knocked on the staff quarters door at noon and delivered the message in 3 words. The boss. Study. Now. Gloria grabbed Zara's arm the second the guard left. Don't say anything he doesn't ask you to say. Don't try to be funny. Don't. Mama. Zara covered her mother's hand with both of hers. I'll be okay. She walked through the estate and knocked on the study door and heard his voice say, enter, and she went in. He was standing this time, not sitting. The desk between them felt deliberate. Sit, he said in Korean. She sat. He looked at her for a moment. Then in careful, measured Korean, he said, you should make arrangements to stay somewhere else. A few weeks. I can provide an address. It will be comfortable. She looked at him. Are you asking me or telling me? A pause. Asking. Then my answer is no. She said it simply, without drama. My mother is here. I don't leave without her. Your mother is not the concern. Then what is? He didn't answer immediately. In the silence, she read him. The set of his jaw, the slight tension around his eyes, the fact that he was standing and not sitting, which meant he was not as in control of this conversation as he wanted to be. He looked at her. In the Seoul nightlight, she could see his face more clearly than she had in the fluorescent precision of his estate, and he looked like a person, not a boss, not a threat, a person who was very tired and had been alone in that tiredness for a very long time. You are the strangest person I have encountered in my life, he said. I've been told. She looked at the plants. I'll water them for you while I'm here. It's a small thing. He said nothing, but he didn't look away from her for a long time. The next morning, an envelope appeared in Zara's room. Inside, her outstanding university fees cleared, a deposit receipt for a small design studio space near Hongdae, a contact for a textile supplier who worked with emerging designers. No name, no note. She stared at it for a long time. Then she reached for her things and went looking. She found him in the courtyard with the morning light just beginning to come over the estate walls, standing near the one outdoor plant that had made it down from the rooftop, a small stubborn green thing, in a clay pot that had no business being as alive as it was. You can't clear my debt and disappear, she said. He looked at her. I can. It's safer. For who? For you. You don't get to decide that. Zara, there's a note, she said. Her voice had dropped. In the envelope. It's in Chui. She waited. One line. He said nothing. Waho ti-san, she said softly. How are you? That's the first thing you learn in any language. The most human sentence there is. She looked at him. You looked that up. The courtyard was quiet. Morning birds. Distant city. I wanted to ask you something you'd actually answer honestly, he said. Her throat tightened. His phone rang. Min June. She could see the name on the screen from where she stood. Dante looked at the phone. He looked at her. In his face, she saw it. The war between the man he had built and the man he was apparently still capable of being. It lasted 3 seconds. He answered. He listened. Something in his posture changed. He looked at her one last time. I have to go. I know. He walked toward the estate. 3 steps. He stopped, didn't turn. Don't leave, he said quietly. She looked at his back, at the man standing in his own doorway like he was afraid to go further in either direction. I'll water the plants, she said. He went inside. You're trying to protect me, she said. Nothing on his face moved, which was its own kind of answer. Zara leaned forward slightly. Mr. Kwon, I grew up watching my mother survive in this city alone. I watched her build something in this house for 15 years with nothing but discipline and dignity. I'm not leaving her in the middle of something she doesn't know is coming. She paused. Whatever it is. Dante looked at her for a long time. You're not afraid of me, he said finally. No, she said. I'm really not. Why? She thought about it honestly. Because you haven't given me a reason to be. You've been strange and quiet, and you told me to eat lunch. That's not a man I'm afraid of. That's a man who doesn't know what to do with me. The silence that followed was the longest one yet. Then something moved at the corner of his mouth. Not a smile. Not quite. But something just beneath the surface of one. Go, he said quietly. Stay close to the estate today. She stood. She bowed. She walked to the door. With her hand on it, she paused, without turning around. The plants on the rooftop terrace, she said. Someone planted those with real care. This house doesn't feel like a place where plants get watered. She waited one beat. I hope whoever planted them knew you noticed. She left. Behind her, Dante stood completely still for a full minute. Then he sat down, and for the first time in a very long time, he didn't pick up his files. It happened that evening. Jang's men came in during the shift change, a window of 4 minutes that should not have existed. 3 men, moving fast, knowing exactly where the blind spot was, knowing the layout. Someone had given them information. They didn't go for any of the things you'd expect. No safes, no files, no staff member with access to anything valuable. They went to the laundry corridor at the back of the estate, where Gloria would be at exactly that hour, because 15 years of routine was also 15 years of predictability. She turned around and found 3 of them in the doorway. They didn't touch her. They didn't need to. They took out a phone, took a photo of her face with the estate interior clearly visible behind her. One of them said in Korean, "Tell the boss we said hello," and they left. Zara came around the corner 3 seconds after they disappeared. She saw her mother against the wall with both hands pressed flat behind her, breathing in the controlled way people breathe when they are managing the difference between panic and collapse. Zara crossed the corridor and put both arms around her and didn't say anything. She just held on. Dante arrived in 90 seconds. He had gotten the alert before Zara had even let go of her mother. By the time he walked into that corridor, his men had already swept the exit points. The 3 Jang operatives would not make it out of the district. He walked to Gloria. He stood in front of her. And then he did something that none of the staff who were watching from the edge of the corridor had ever seen Dante Kwon do. He bowed. A real bow. Slow and deliberate. The kind that carried weight. "I apologize," he said in Korean. "This happened in my house. It will not happen again. You have my word." Gloria looked at this man she had worked for, feared for, and quietly grieved for across 15 years, and she could not speak. Zara stood behind her mother. She was watching Dante's face. He straightened up and his eyes met hers for just a moment. Something raw in them, something that had no armor around it, before he looked away and moved into the corridor to manage what came next. Zara stayed with her mother all evening, but she thought about that look for a long time. She found him on the rooftop terrace past 11. She wasn't looking for him specifically. She had needed air and her feet had taken her up, but there he was, standing at the railing in the dark, soul blazing below him, his jacket off for the first time since she had arrived, just a man looking at a city. The rooftop had the plants. Small ones, in clay pots lined along the railing edge, carefully maintained, completely out of place in the context of everything else about this man. She walked out and sat on the low bench near the pots without asking permission. He didn't tell her to leave. They sat in silence for a while. A real silence, not a tense one. The kind of silence that happens between people who have moved past performing comfort at each other. Then Zara said quietly, "Tell me about your brother." His head turned toward her, sharp, careful. She didn't take it back. He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, in a voice she had not heard from him before, lower, stripped of his authority, just a voice, "Jay planted those." He nodded at the pots. He said this house was missing something living. He came up here every week. A pause. He said I was going to come furniture if I didn't stop working. Zara looked at the plants. Was he right? A longer pause. "Yes," Dante said. She let it sit. She didn't rush toward it with sympathy or comfort. She just let it exist in the air between them. The way her mother had taught her grief deserved to be treated, with space, not solutions. After a while, Dante said, "You're not going to tell me you're sorry." "You've been hearing sorry for 3 years," she said. "I don't think it reached you." He looked at her. In the Seoul nightlight, she could see his face more clearly than she had in the fluorescent precision of his estate. And he looked like a person, not a boss, not a threat, a person who was very tired and had been alone in that tiredness for a very long time. "You are the strangest person I have encountered in my life," he said. "I've been told." She looked at the plants. "I'll water them for you. While I'm here, it's a small thing." He said nothing, but he did look away from her for a long time. "Zara, there's a note," she said. Her voice had dropped. "In the envelope, it's in Chui." She waited. "One line." He said nothing. "Waho ti son," she said softly. "How are you?" That's the first thing you learn in any language. The most human sentence there is. She looked at him. "You looked that up." The courtyard was quiet. Morning birds. Distant city. "I wanted to ask you something you'd actually answer honestly," he said. Her throat tightened. His phone rang. Min June. She could see the name on the screen from where she stood. Dante looked at the phone. He looked at her. In his face she saw it. The war between the man he had built and the man he was apparently still capable of being. It lasted 3 seconds. He answered. He listened. Something in his posture changed. He looked at her one last time. "I have to go." "I know." He walked toward the estate. 3 steps. He stopped, didn't turn. "Don't leave," he said quietly. She looked at his back, at the man standing in his own doorway like he was afraid to go further in either direction. "I'll water the plants," she said. He went inside. Zara stood in the courtyard alone. She looked at the small, stubborn plant in its clay pot. She crouched down and touched one leaf carefully, the way you touch something you decided to take care of. Seoul carried on beyond the walls. Inside the estate, something that had been closed for 3 years was sitting open. Nobody knew yet what would come through it. Asterisk, and that's where we leave them. If this story got to you, if Dante's laugh broke something in you the way it broke that room, then you know what to do. Subscribe so you're here for episode 2. Leave a like if Zara earned it. And tell us in the comments, are you Team Zara, or are you still pretending you don't feel sorry for Dante? Drop where you're watching from. We read every single one. Asterisk.